The sun was just beginning to rise over the airport, painting the sky in soft hues of orange and pink. Inside the terminal, the air was quiet, peaceful, and carried a slight chill. Near Gate 37, Ibrahim Traoré stood calmly, his presence unremarkable to the casual observer. He wore no suit, had no bodyguards, and carried nothing flashy. To most, he appeared to be just another African traveler. But this man was far from ordinary. He was Ibrahim Traoré, the president of Burkina Faso. This was how he preferred to travel, humbly, privately, and without fanfare. No cameras, no loud announcements, no entourage. He believed in moving among the people, blending in rather than standing apart. His return from a diplomatic meeting in Europe was no exception. There, he had concluded critical discussions about gold reserves, national sovereignty, and Africa's future. Now, all he desired was to return home. As he walked toward the Air France flight bound for Ouagadougou, he greeted an airport worker in French with a warm smile. "Bonjour, ça? The worker smiled back, utterly unaware of the identity of the man before him. That anonymity was precisely how Traoré liked it. He boarded the plane quietly, nodded politely to the flight crew, and took his seat in business class, row 2A by the window. No one paid him any attention. No one seemed to care. Or so he thought. The CEO who expected privilege. A few rows behind him, whispers had already begun. A senior French businessman, the CEO of a major energy company, was also en route to Burkina Faso. This man was accustomed to VIP treatment. Red carpets, champagne upon arrival, and first-class service at every turn. But when he arrived at the gate, the airline staff delivered unwelcome news. Business class was fully booked. The CEO's face darkened. He was not a man who accepted the word no. What began as a quiet complaint soon escalated into a storm. Surrounded by anxious assistants and airline personnel, he tapped his polished shoes impatiently. "C'est ridicule," he declared, his voice dripping with arrogance. "I am a strategic partner in multiple African projects." To him, this statement alone should have been enough to bend the rules. He demanded an immediate upgrade. The gate agents scrambled, checking their tablets, whispering into headsets, but the reality was undeniable. Every seat in business class was occupied. Yet the CEO persisted, his tone growing sharper. That was when the airline summoned Claire, a senior Air France flight attendant, to intervene. Claire was tall, white, and impeccably dressed in her Air France uniform. She wore a practiced, frosty smile as she stepped onto the plane to resolve the situation. Her sharp eyes scanned the cabin, searching for someone who didn't belong in business class. Her gaze landed on seat 2A. There, a dark-skinned man sat quietly, scrolling through his phone. No luxury watch, no entourage, no visible markers of importance, just a black man in a hoodie. Claire's lips curled slightly as she leaned toward a colleague. "Probably a mistake," she muttered under her breath. Approaching Traoré, she forced a polite smile. "Monsieur, may I see your boarding pass?" He handed it to her without objection. She scrutinized the document, then him, then the pass again. The seat was rightfully his, yet something about his presence unsettled her. Moments later, she returned, her smile thinner, her tone firmer. "Sir, we need to relocate you to economy to accommodate another passenger. You'll be compensated, of course." Traoré raised an eyebrow. "And why me?" Operational reasons, Claire replied, her voice tight. Explain why I'm the one being moved, he countered, his calm unwavering. Around them, passengers began to shift uncomfortably. A businessman lowered his newspaper. A woman paused her typing. The air grew thick with tension. Claire, flustered, retreated to consult the cockpit. When she returned, she bypassed Traore entirely and instead targeted another black passenger, a young African man in his late 20s. "You, sir, we need your seat," she said, her tone leaving no room for debate. The young man frowned. "Why me?" Claire didn't answer. She simply took his boarding pass. That was when Traore stood. "Enough," he said, his voice low but carrying the weight of authority. "You are making decisions based on skin color, not tickets. That is called discrimination." Claire stiffened. "Sir, I must ask you not to cause a scene." But Traore's gaze silenced her. There was something in his eyes, steady, fearless, and utterly unshaken, that made her breath hitch. Still, she didn't recognize him. To her, he remained just another passenger who dared to challenge her. Meanwhile, the CEO was finally ushered on board, showered with apologies and champagne. Claire attended to him with exaggerated deference, adjusting his seat, offering warm towels, and laughing at his jokes. The CEO, basking in the attention, remarked smugly, "Burkina Faso is lucky to have us. We bring order to chaos." Claire nodded eagerly, oblivious to the fact that the president of Burkina Faso sat just 2 rows away, listening. Only one person in the cabin seemed to grasp the truth, an African nurse returning home to Bobo Dioulasso. She leaned toward her neighbor and whispered, "That's our president. They don't even know who they're humiliating." As the plane began its descent into Ouagadougou, passengers peered out the windows, murmuring in confusion. Below, a convoy of black SUVs and military vehicles waited on the tarmac, flanked by rows of armed guards. Burkina Faso's most powerful officials, the ministers of defense, foreign affairs, and security, stood at attention, their expressions solemn. The CEO smirked. "This must be for me," he told Claire, who simpered in agreement. But the moment the cabin door opened, reality shattered. A soldier in a black beret marched inside, his boots echoing through the silent plane. He stopped at C2A and snapped a crisp salute. "Monsieur le Président, welcome home." The silence was deafening. Claire's face drained of color. The CEO's mouth fell open. Traore rose, his dignity untouched, as the officer turned to Claire and the CEO. "You are both detained for disrespecting the head of state on Burkinabe soil." Handcuffs clicked into place. Claire stammered, "I didn't know." An investigator cut her off. "You didn't need to know. You only needed to treat him with basic humanity. Justice and the new Africa." Outside, Traore addressed the press, his words measured but piercing. "In Burkina Faso, we do not measure a man's worth by his skin or his wealth. We do not bow to colonial mindset. Here, we respect dignity for all." The story exploded across the globe. Videos of the arrest went viral. Air France issued a hollow apology, but calls for a boycott spread like wildfire. The CEO faced legal repercussions in both Burkina Faso and France, while Claire's career crumbled. And President Traore? He returned to work, building roads, empowering youth, and defending his nation, as the legend of the unassuming man in Seat 2A became a symbol of resilience and justice.